And here we are, game week 7 in Serie A, and there are so many goals, so many games for us to discuss, but we're going to start with Andrea's beloved Viola, as they got a huge win at home, taking on Milan with a 2-1 win. And where do we even start with this game? 3 penalties saved. Just absolutely incredible, Andrea. Has your heart rate slowed down yet?
Definitely not. I'm still thinking about the penalties that were given. I can't believe it. It was horrendous. And I think it's a shame because I think it overshadowed, for once, a Fiorentina performance where I could actually be proud and say that was a great performance.
Mm-hmm.
And you could kind of see. And I'm quite proud of the manager as well for the tactic change as well. And you can kind of see the stylistic play. And I think to give him credit is the fact that he's starting to stick to a certain lineup now. Where I still debate some of the selections like Cataldi, I still think playing that same 11. It's going to build the chemistry and hopefully build a bit more consistency as well. But it was a great performance, and I think defensively looked a lot more solid. I think Milan didn't create as much chances, or it could be to the extent that they didn't play as good as they could have. But I certainly think Fiorentina were able to shut them down a lot in the final third. But overall, I think it was just a mess of a game at the same time, and I think it did take over. But we've got to appreciate David De Gea, of course. What a goalkeeper. And it still drives me crazy how Terracciano was starting ahead of him. I said as soon as he signed, he should have been on the pitch. Like, he's a winner, he's a leader. He has everything as a top goalkeeper, even though he hasn't played for a year. He's got everything, and those saves just highlight, on his day he can win you games, and he won us that game in the end. Despite us playing well, he made those saves in penalties, but also reflex saves as well. He's one of the best I've ever seen in recent years who can do that as well. But yeah, overall it was a great game, but boy, the refereeing decisions have to be talked about because they were terrible. Even the penalty they gave us, I think Dodo's one was really harsh as well. I would be annoyed if I was a Milan fan. So yeah, unfortunately that overshadowed it, but very happy with the Fiorentina performance at least. And yeah, it was really good to see.
Well, and I want to talk to you about the tactical switch. So we went from a back 3 to a back 4 with Gosens and Dodo as the wing backs, and then Ranieri and Camuzzo, who I think Camuzzo is a player that a lot of people are very excited about as well. Like, why do you think that was so much more effective in terms of allowing Fiorentina to build up? Because they did just look a lot more solid.
I think it gave the opportunity now for the Fiorentina midfield to have an extra player, an extra man midfield. You now see Colpani coming deep, even Goodmanson coming deep as well. There's more interlink between the midfield and the attack, and I think we're seeing that more of a flow. Whereas I think when we were playing 3 at the back, because the midfield's so short, we were forced out wide a lot, and it ended up just being crossing into the box looking for Keane. But when you have technically gifted players like Colpani and Goodmanson, you've got to use them through the middle. And I think and we saw that again yesterday. And you also see as well the goal in the end that came through right through the middle, and you can go direct as well, which is amazing because you've got someone like Keane who can cause havoc, and that's what happened in the end, even though it was a Tomori mistake. But I think systematically it allows that extra man in midfield, but also it gives a lot of pressure off the defence on its own, because I feel with a 3-back defence, a lot of pressure is on them, and we've kind of already seen quite a few of them kind of fumble under the pressure, like Pongracic can't even get looking now. And he was meant to be the Milenkovic replacement. Looks like Camuzzo now is the replacement. And to be fair, Camuzzo, I've been quite impressed with him. Like, he seems very commanding, reads the game well. He's still got a long way to go, but I'm liking what I'm seeing at the moment, to be fair. But yeah, I think that's the key aspect. I think the 3 was never going to work, and I think we covered this before. It was because the centre backs we have just don't have the quality to do that 3 at the back. And I think now we've got 2 central defenders that can do the job, and they can rely on the midfield to kind of take the ball forward instead of the 3 defenders having to do that, having to play the extra step. So I think that's the main difference.
Well, it definitely paid off. It was a much more assured performance from Fiorentina. I was really very impressed by a lot of the players. My favourite, Eduardo Bove, had an incredible game as well. He was absolutely everywhere on the pitch. You could not Like every time you looked, he was doing something. He was in the right place. He was harrying. He was pressing. Absolutely incredible performance from him. But Adam, we do need to talk about the refereeing decisions, because I think sometimes with my more Premier League focused life, I think that a lot of the referees are desperate to give penalties in the Premier League, and then I look at Serie A and I'm like, no, they love giving penalties in Serie A, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think none of these were a penalty, right? But once you give the first one, you have to give all the ones after that, right?
Yeah, I think for a consistency point of view, I think you do have to give them. However, I'm much in agreement that they were very debatable, a lot of them. And when you kind of, I suppose, contrast, I think the previous day we saw in the Inter Torino match, a very similar circumstance where it was definitely a penalty. It was Hakan Çalhanoğlu fouling Adam Messina in the area. But I think that set the precedent in terms of how this was given, because I think just because of the nature of the way that was given as a penalty, this was having to be kind of followed. But I would say it was kind of followed very loosely in the very context. I mean, the first one, for example, looked suspect at the very least, but then followed on by the further ones that we've experienced. So yeah, I think, there's a lot of question marks about the referee on the day itself, but Andrea won't care, because De Gea did save those penalties, and ultimately, if Moise Kean could have put his away, then you could have been looking at a much more handsome scoreline there for Fiorentina. But the penalties, what can we say? Definitely not penalties, I would say, in other leagues for sure.
Yeah, it was a bizarre refereeing performance. I have to say, Moise Kean was so unlucky to finish this game without a goal. The late break on as well, where he absolutely wellied that against the crossbar. I don't think he could have hit it any harder if he'd tried. It was an unbelievable strike. Just so unlucky that he came off the crossbar, I thought. But his hold-up play throughout the game, I was really impressed. I feel like it's something that he's really developed. Like, in the past, I think he was a little bit lightweight. But now you can see he's bulking up a bit. He's able to hold off defenders and bring other players in. This relationship that could build between him and Gudmundsson, I think, is quite exciting, with Gudmundsson running from deep, like you said, Andre, and kind of backing him up. I thought that was really impressive. And of course, Yassine Adli scoring against his parent club, because, football is just like that. Another player I really like, I thought he played very well, and it was a nice little finish, that. But Adam, let's talk about Milan. A little bit disappointing going forward. Obviously, the really beautiful finish from Pulisic with an incredible ball into the box as well, but just an incredible finish. But I feel like they aren't really making goalkeepers work. Like, De Gea, obviously, beyond the penalties, made one or two saves, but they're not quite getting that shot on goal. They're not getting that last little touch, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a quality into the box. I think that was what really disappointed from a Milan perspective. Because if you look at the amount of shots they did have in total, there was about 16 shots. The problem was that what you kind of classify as maybe like the big chances, they only had really 3. And looking at the XG as well, they're creating the opportunities. So it just felt like on the day, it was just being able to kind of make those chances really count when they were in the area. I didn't necessarily, in this match, when you kind of look back, I didn't necessarily feel like Morata or Abraham contributed as much. And, they're well known for kind of terrorizing defences in terms of not giving them time to think. But I didn't ever feel that during the course of the match. I felt like Fiorentina coped with their kind of attacks quite admirably. And if anything, it was kind of those deep-lying midfielders that, the likes of Reinders, Pulisic, that you had to be more wary of from a Fiorentina point of view. And that's probably why Palladino went with Bove to kind of nullify that kind of threat. I think when you look at the way that they approached it, I think that's probably a question mark, maybe perhaps from Fonseca, in terms of maybe thinking outside the box. What could he do? Potentially maybe the use of the fullbacks potentially to push the Fiorentina wing-backs a bit more. But otherwise, generally, it seems like, just the quality of chances weren't there for Milan. And on the day, I think Fiorentina did really well to cope with it, considering the circumstances, especially when you think Ranieri tangles with legs with Pulisic in the box and gives away that penalty initially. I think that was the only really big chance that I could remember in the first half from a Milan perspective. So that says a lot. So I think that's quite well done by Fiorentina generally in terms of their game plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like they handled Leao and Pulisic very, very well. I feel like Leao had one of his typical kind of quite frustrating performances where he's just not quite able to get that final ball into the box, not quite as exciting as he could be. But I think another interesting talking point, I hope, here is the managers. Because this is obviously a huge win for Palladino, right? Like, and Adam, I'm going to ask you about where this leaves Fonseca, but like, Andrea, how big is this win for Palladino now? Because obviously the whispers were starting to become not quite shouts, but people talking quite affirmatively about his future. Like, just how big a win is this for Palladino?
I think it's massive because I think it's kind of changed the mindset on him because the win was that convincing, and it was better all round, and I think him recognizing what wasn't working and adjusting to it, sticking into an 11 now that he feels is the right one, and they've won, convincingly against Milan, who was still a really good team. I think obviously that puts him in a really good light. So yeah, I think it's absolutely massive, especially going into the international break, because if you mess up with an international break, those are the type of ones where happens behind the scenes, But I think he needed that massively. But again, it's about consistency. So we're seeing it now in the tactic and the team selection. We just now just need to see it in the results, because you can't go and beat Milan and then go to Lecce away in a few weeks' time and drop points, because the questions will come back again. So I don't think he's completely out of it yet, but that win definitely puts it in the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The international breaks, it's narrative setting for 2 weeks worth of headlines in newspapers, isn't it? Like, it just defines everything. So it's absolutely huge for him. But Adam, for Milan and Fonseca, after the derby win, obviously it felt like they would really kick on and they would really kind of start putting a marker down. Now, obviously a 3-0 win against Lecce is a 3-0 win against Lecce, fine. But an okay performance in Leverkusen, only losing 1-0, but then this result here, where do you think this leaves Fonseca? I think people are still massively unconvinced, and that derby win feels like a kind of motivational achievement more than a tactical masterclass, right?
Yeah, it does feel like that at the moment on the grand scheme of things. I think they were unlucky against Leverkusen when you look back on the highlights as well, because I think, they had their moments in the game, just weren't maybe pushing the game as much as they probably would have wanted to. But yeah, I think there's still question marks defensively with this Milan squad. In particular, Tomori, I feel like he's been suspect, in particular against this game in Fiorentina. He was very questionable in terms of that decision. Even with the kind of direct ball that De Gea kind of gives for that second goal, Tomori really struggles to deal with it. And I think that plays a huge part in terms of that solidity that they're trying to build on. They change formation, change the kind of personnel, and they're trying to find the right kind of combination at the moment. I suspect maybe Fonseca is still kind of looking at what he can do broadly with this team. But I think the Milan board will still give him time, given the circumstances. I just think, obviously, maybe it's just a question of building some momentum in the next few games. I can see they've got obviously Udinese, then Club Brugge, followed by Bologna away, before, again, a really big game at the San Siro against Napoli. So, it's going to be important that they at least try and take some points against Bologna, which I anticipate they probably could do, and also Udinese. So, but I'm not going to say they're going to be easy games, because we know they seem to struggle against those games that they should take points from.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but a bruising defeat for Milan, a boisterous or motivating win for Fiorentina, and just an all-round great game. And just one more mention for David De Gea making 2 penalty saves. I did see a very funny Man United fan on Twitter tweet, "Every day the Lord finds a new way to mock us," and today is David De Gea saving 2 penalties in one game. Absolutely incredible scenes. But Andrea, you're right. As a shot stopper, he's absolutely world-class. It's unbelievable, and what a signing for Fiorentina. So delighted with that result. And Serie A Sunday evenings, it was nice to see a proper blockbuster. I feel like we've missed them for a while. That was a real blockbuster. But Fiorentina 2, Milan 1, done.